Hi all. Welcome Math 2 to our intro to our inequality unit. So we are going to do our first unit on inequalities. And so I'm going to do a little bit of an introduction just in case you forgot what inequality is, and also review with you how do we put this on a graph or on a number line. So let's start with what is an inequality. So an inequality is a comparison of two numbers. So your job today, or for this video, is to take notes and then come with those notes prepared to class to practice. And so we're just kind of preparing ourselves so we can get a head start, so we don't have to do this during class. So make sure that you do have a piece of paper out so you can write down the notes, so then you can get your credit for watching this video. Okay, so an inequality is a comparison of two numbers or two expressions. So we'll learn about what that is later, the expressions. Today, we're just going to worry about a comparison of two numbers. And so with the inequality, there are four symbols. Hopefully you have heard of this before. So we have this, which is a less than symbol. And I remember that because less than points to the left. We also have a less than or equal to symbol, which you underline. So again, less than to the left, less than or equal to. We also have the greater than symbol, which points to the right, or we have greater than or equal to. So these are the four symbols that we're going to be working with for this unit. And just remembering that this here is less than to the left and greater than points to the right. We're not really going to be comparing numbers necessarily, but we are going to be analyzing these using variables and numbers. So let's take a look and see how we're going to use these. Okay, so we're going to put these on a number line eventually. That's going to come in the next slide. What we're going to talk about here is just looking at an expression or an inequality expression here of x is greater than 2 and determining, once we have to go to a number line, what is this going to look like? So there's two things that we're going to take a look at. We're going to decide what direction the arrow is pointed towards, and then we're going to determine if the circle that we make when we go to the graph, when we plot this number on the number line, if that number is going to be an open or a closed circle. So we're going to start with number 1. So the first thing we want to do is identify what kind of symbol is this. So we talked about before in the last slide that when it points to the right, this is greater than. So if you look over here at the symbol greater than, here we are. So it's greater than, and so it points to the right, right? So that means the direction of our first number 1, when we actually go to plot this, is that the direction is to the right. So arrow will point to the right. And then we want to know, once we make that circle over the number 2, are we going to make it a closed circle or an open circle? And so you can see on the chart here that our less than and our greater than symbols here are open. And that's because they're not underlined. They're not including that number. It's not equal to. So this is going to be pointing to the right, and we're going to have an open circle. Okay, so our next one is x, and then this is less than, because less than is pointed to the left, less than or equal to -3. So since it's pointed to the left, that means that our arrow is going to point to the left. And then this time, if you look at these two symbols, the less than or equal to and greater than or equal to, it says in this chart here that those should be closed. So that's up to you if you want to copy this chart down so you remember that, or you can summarize it in your own words. But if they're underlined like this, these two are going to be a closed circle. You're going to fill it in. So this is going to be a closed circle. Okay, so whenever it is just regular symbol, we're going to leave an open circle. But if it's underlined, we're going to make it a closed circle. All right, lastly, number 3. So hopefully you're looking at number 3 and realizing, this is not in the same format as numbers 1 and 2. So if you notice here, my x is flipped and on the right side of inequality instead of on the left side. It's not listed first. So we can't analyze or graph this until we put it in the proper format. If you analyze it here, you're going to analyze it incorrectly because we want the x to be first. So we are just literally going to flip-flop them like this. So we're going to put the x first, and we'll put the 0 behind it. So it'll be x and then 0. Now, the problem is when we switch it around, we can't just drop this inequality symbol down here because it's not the same. If you notice here, this inequality symbol pointed to the x. So this inequality symbol down here also needs to point to the x. So we have to flip this one as well. So this is the correct format for number 3. We should have x is less than 0, not 0 is greater than x. Even though it's saying the same thing, we will analyze the graph incorrectly based on where we point the arrow. The arrow should always be pointed towards the x like this. So this one is actually less than, and so we're going to have the arrow pointing to the left because it's less than. And then this time, because it's not underlined, it falls in this category of an open circle. Okay, now that we've analyzed what the expressions look like, now we're actually going to put these on the graph and see how they look like on a graph. So let's hop to the next slide. So the next slide here, we're going to take these on the left-hand side, A, B, C, D, and we're going to graph them over here. I'm going to show you how to graph them appropriately. So you can write down some, all, whatever you think is helpful in your notes so you remember how to graph these. So let's start with this one. Here are the steps that I would do. First is I would find the number. So for A, we're looking at the number -5. So I would go onto the number line and I would go to the -5. So that'd be to the left, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it's right here. And I'll go ahead and write it in for you. So this is -5. So then what I would do is I would determine what kind of circle am I going to put on the -5? Is it going to be closed or is it going to be open? So since it's underlined over here, that means, if you remember from our last slide, that means that I'm going to color it in. It's going to be a filled in circle. So that's what that would look like. So you're going to make a nice big circle right above or on top of the -5. Now, once we know that we close it, the last step is to draw an arrow to indicate all of the numbers that are less than or equal to -5. So it's less than to the left. So we're going to point it to the left. So now we're drawing in. So this is a graph showing that all my numbers are less than -5. Any number is less than -5. And that's it. That's our solution. All right. So for B, let's change up the color here. So again, first step I would do is I would go to the -3, 1, 2, 3, and I would put a circle and then determine, is that circle going to stay an open circle or do I need to fill it in? So for B, this is not underlined. So I'm going to keep it the way it is. It's not equal to, it's an open circle. It's not equal to -3. Now determine which way am I going to point my arrow. This time it's greater than, so it's all the numbers that are greater than -3. So I'm going to take this arrow and I'm going to draw a line to the right showing that my graph is showing all numbers that are -3 or greater than. And that's my solution for B. Okay, letter C, let's change colors again. So C this time, remember, is the wrong order. So I have to flip it. So I have put my X first and my 2 second, or in the back. Now I have to flip it. So it was pointed to the left. I want to point it now to the right. Okay, so it's going to flip its symbol. So it should be X is greater than or equal to 2 in order to graph it appropriately. Now I will graph this. Remember, step 1, go to the number. Draw your circle. Here's 2. I'm going to fill it in because it is equal to. So that indicates I'm going to fill in the circle because it's equal to 2. Now it's greater than 2 and it points to the right. So since I'm pointing to the right, I'm going to point my graph to the right. All my numbers are greater than or equal to a +2. All right, last but not least, D. X is less than 4. So let's find 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. First step, make a circle. Okay, is it closed or open? It's going to say open because it's not equal to. And then it's less than, and the arrow is pointed to the left. So I'm going to draw my arrow to the left. Okay, so this is what these 4 graphs will look like. And this is kind of the main idea of today, is I want you to be able to see where the graph is, or see where am I going to plot it. Is my circle going to be open or closed? And what way do I point my arrow? Now let's take it a few steps further, we got 2 more things to do. Next thing is, let's try to see if we can figure out if things are solutions or not. So let's go back to plot graph number A. We just graphed this, so I'm going to graph it really quickly for you again. So I'm going to go to -5. I'm going to close the circle, and I'm going to point it to the left. I'm going to over-exaggerate this graph so you can see all the solutions. So the question is here is, are the following integers solutions to the given inequalities? So number 1 here says x is equal to 6. So if I go on my graph here, and I find the number 6, does my graph overlap the number 6 at all? And the answer is no. So that means that this is a false answer. It is not, 6 is not a solution. So this would be false. Number 1 is false. Number 2, is x equal to 5? So if we go here, again, if I put an x on -5, yes, it is a solution because that is where the dot is and it's a filled in circle. So number 2 is true. X is -5 is a solution to this graph. Next question. X equals -20. Is this a solution? So although you cannot see it on this graph, hopefully you remember from Math 1 last year that this arrow means that it goes on and on and on and on forever as negative and negative and negative infinity. So -20 would be an answer, even though it's not on the graph. Anything smaller than -5, -20, -40, -100, -1,000,000, -1 billion, gazillion, jillion, I don't even know if that's a thing, but anything less than -5 is a true solution, even though it's not on the graph. Okay, so just to recap, number 1 is false. It's not on the graph. Number 2 and 3 are true because they do lie within that, that arrow. Okay, B, let's check this one out real quick. So this one, I will graph it again for you very quickly. So open circle above the -3, and I'm going to point to the right. So again, we're checking here to see if these are solutions. So 6, if I were to go to 6, yes, 6 falls in this graph in the range that I colored in with the arrow. So 6 is true. Number 2, x is equal to -5. Out here, no, that is not a true solution because it's not within the solution set that I drew of the arrow. And then lastly, -20. Okay, obviously that one is also not a solution because it's way over here somewhere. So here's my question. What about x is equal to -3? Would that be a solution? So right here, is x equal to -3? This is a trick question. The answer is actually false. It is not equal to -3 because it's not filled in. Up here, it was true because the -5 was filled in, but down here, this is false. So it is not true. X is not equal to -3. So this will be one of your tasks that I will ask you to do, is to determine if integers are solutions on your graph. All right, last but not least, the last thing we're going to do is actually look at a graph. So I'm going to make one up and we're going to find what was the equation that I started with. So we're going to go backwards. So I'm just going to make something up here. Let's go to -1. And so here is my graph. And so we are going to go opposite and we are going to try to create, well, what was the equation or the inequality that I used in order to make this graph? So I'm going to go backwards. So here's what I would do. These would be my steps, kind of the same way that you graphed it. So first thing we know is there has to be an x, there has to be a variable. You can use whatever variable you want. Usually x or y are going to be your most common. And then let's put the number. So we know that this is above -1. So I'm going to put the variable and the number. And so the only thing I have to do is fill in what inequality symbol is going to go into my missing space here. That's the only thing that I have to fill in. So I know that it's pointing to the left. So that's less than it. Whatever way this points is your same symbol that you're going to use here. So see, that's why I have you guys change it, so you know it's in the right order. If the arrow is pointed this way, that is the same symbol that we're going to use. The last thing is just ask yourself, is it equal to? Do I need to put a line under it, or am I going to leave it how it is? Since the circle is open, we're just going to leave it how it is, and this is your answer. Okay, last but not least is, let's do another one. Let's go here. And we're going to go this way. Okay, so again, what I would do, I would start with listing your variable first, and then whatever number. So this is a +2. And then all we have to do is fill in what inequality symbol is going to be used in this space here. So again, since it is pointed to the right, see how the arrow is like that? That's the symbol that we're going to use in between, is whatever arrow is pointed that way. Now, again, the question is, do I underline it or not? In this case, since I filled it in, that means it is equal to, so I need to underline it this time. And that will be your final answer. X is greater than or equal to 2. Okay, that is it for Introduction to Inequalities and how to graph them on a number line. And we will continue on with our unit tomorrow.